successful solo practitioner tips with Lauren Lester. Smart Lawyers Position and Transition. I'm Victoria Collier, and this is the Smart Lawyers Position and Transition podcast. I'm with our guest today, Lauren Lester, and we will be discussing how solo practitioners can enjoy their practice and their lives more. Smart Lawyers Position and Transition transforms the lives of attorneys who want better, more valuable law firms that in time want to sell it and find life after law. The information provided is not intended to be legal, financial, or any other kind of advice, just good information and sometimes entertainment. Well, we often speak about scaling our law firms, making tons of money, I like that one, and living the lifestyle of our dreams. But sometimes we need to actually recognize that that is not one size fits all, and that some lawyers will always want to be solo practitioners, and they too can have the lifestyle of their dreams while working less and making more money. Today, our guest is Lauren Lester, who is a solopreneur who provides affordable help to clients in Colorado with her estate and family law firm, Lester Law. Lauren is also passionate about helping lawyers build profitable practices, profitable being a good word there, that they also love, because we hear so much about lawyers that have practices and they're just not in love. So Lauren, she founded what's a business called A Different Practice, which offers business coaching and other practical resources for optimizing your law firm for profit and enjoyment. Thank you so much, Lauren, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Victoria. I'm so glad to chat with you.
Yeah, likewise. So, obviously this is a podcast for lawyers, and oftentimes our guests are lawyers. And so apparently I love surrounding myself with lawyers. And so share with us, more about who you are, what brought you into the law, and then, why your position, your slant, your take is what it is, which is what we're going to be talking about today, our topic.
So law is actually a second career for me. And like probably most of the listeners and us attorneys, I got into it because I ultimately wanted to help people. But my real angle was I wanted to own my own business, which I don't think a lot of lawyers go to law school for. So I had been in the web development space for about a decade and kind of just had the realization, probably that most of us do in our late 20s. Before that, I had no idea what I wanted to do, that I ultimately just wanted to be my own boss. I didn't like working for somebody else. I wanted to be creative. I wanted to be able to help people in a more entrepreneurial way. And so after doing a Google search on what should I do with my life, which is literally what I think I plugged in, I came across a career kind of assessment that sort of told you, here are some careers that you might be good at. And the two results that I got were to be a social worker or an attorney. And I never thought I would be an attorney. I quite frankly didn't like attorneys. I wasn't like the folks on TV. A lot of the attorneys I knew were sort of that stereotypical big personality, pushy litigator. And I thought, that's not me. How could this assessment must be totally wrong. But I stayed open to it and looked into law school and said I would give myself a year. And if I hated it, I'll go figure something else out. But ended up loving law school and loving the law and really thought it was a great vehicle for me to ultimately have my own business and be able to help people through the legal process. And so that's what brought me.
So what I heard was I didn't know what I needed to do. So I took a test and it said, go to school for 3 more years, spend lots of money to see if I might like something else.
Yes, so, maybe that test was sponsored by a law school. I don't know.
That, and you said you'd give yourself a year, not knowing that the first year in law school is the worst. That is, certainly the make or break year for sure. But it made you, it didn't break you. So, so you said, I can own my own business. Were you thinking own my own law firm at that point? Or were you thinking with my law degree, I could own any kind of business that I would like to?
I was thinking own my own law firm. And I went into law school with those sort of bright eyes, thinking that was a possibility, and then quickly learned nobody talks about that in law school. And I got a lot of side eyes of like, are you serious? That must be because you can't get a job in big law, or you're not good enough to be a prosecutor. And I just kind of kept my head down and thought, having come to it as a second career, having had some work experience outside of the legal profession, I sort of relied on that and said, I'm just going to give this a shot. I can always go work as an associate. I can always go find a job. And I knew having a JD, even if I left the profession, was still going to be a valuable degree. So I just sort of said, okay, let me try and prove them wrong. And, here I am more than 8 years later doing just that.
That's great. I mean, your words speak from maturity for sure. I mean, you can tell that you had some experience before going to law school, because while you were bright-eyed, you were also realistic and had your goals that you were set on, and you made it happen. So how was it starting your own practice right out of law school, when law school does nothing to set you up to be a business owner?
Zero. Yes. So it was interesting. So that I really relied on that prior experience that I had. I didn't run the business, but I was pretty heavily involved in the two employment opportunities that I had. So I thought, okay, I can figure out this business thing. I love to read. I surrounded myself with all the nonfiction business experts and just learned from them. And then the scariest part was the substantive piece. Is I felt I did all this work. I passed the bar. They handed me this license, and then I thought, and now I'm supposed to like actually be a lawyer, but wait, right. What do I do? And so I surrounded myself with a lot of mentors for the substantive piece, and that gave me that balance where I felt like I had the confidence to at least be able to figure it out. I definitely muddled my way through it. I made a lot of mistakes. I did a lot of just throwing stuff against the wall to see what would stick in the beginning, and then was able to refine that and actually create processes and frameworks that I was able to replicate.
And so that's my understanding. What you help others with now is not the substantive part of law, but you are a mentor, coach, guide, whatever words you choose, when you created a different practice. So tell us about that business, and when did you start that?
So that came out of having a lot of folks ask me, but how do you do that? Because I would just sort of share that I work part-time, and then I have this revenue goal that I hit and this profit margin. And I really focus my time on spending it with the clients and not doing admin work. And I'd have a lot of attorneys be like, yeah, but how do you do that? Because you're absolutely right. There's nothing in law school that we learned. And a lot of even the CLEs are more substantive based. And a lot of the general business resources that are out there, which are phenomenal, they're not geared to the unique needs of law firms. And so I just had folks ask me over and over again. And I thought, well, maybe I should put this down somewhere so I don't have to keep answering the same question. So it really started simply as a blog. I just kind of made these posts about technology I was using, or processes I was working on, or how I was giving clients really great experiences, just to share that knowledge with my fellow practitioners. And then that built into PDF resources and coaching and workshops, and it's sort of grown from there. But it really was me just saying, I've already made the mistakes. Y'all don't have to. Here's a process that I found that works. And if you can implement it in your law firm, you can kind of take some of those challenges away and really enjoy what you do every day.
Now, why did you choose estate planning and family law? Because those are certainly two different practice areas, but they do complement each other. Everyone getting a divorce needs a will. But how did you choose those areas?
So I always wanted to work with the legal consumers, kind of just everyday people. And from the beginning of even law school, I thought family law would be a good fit for me. I liked the idea of helping folks and being there through basically a storm in their lives, kind of a really difficult time, and being a strong shoulder that they could rely on. And so I did that kind of exclusively for the first bit of my practice. And then, as probably many family law practitioners know, it gets real heavy, real fast. It's hard to go through everybody's divorce with them. And so I brought on estate planning because I liked, again, being able to still work with those same everyday people who are just trying to protect their family. But it was definitely less litigious, less contested, a little bit more transactional. So that was a nice balance for me to still be able to help, but not have so much of the burden of the family law.
And you mentioned using technology to increase, your productivity, efficiency. Can you give us some examples of some technology that you find to be extremely helpful in running a law practice?
Yeah, so I use it from everything from scheduling calls to document creation, client communication, managing finances. So anywhere I can put some automation in, I'm happy to do it. So scheduling calls was a really big one. I didn't have that initially. Now I use Acuity for all of the client calls and all of the consultations. Before it was a lot of emails back and forth, which just drove me nuts. So even a small, simple one like that has made such a difference in my practice and taken that admin side out of it. And then for document creation, I currently use Gavel, which I really like. I upgraded. I used to use the native document automation tool in Clio, but found some limitations with that. It's a little clunky. So I really like the upgrade to Gavel. I'm able to have the clients provide a lot of the input, so I'm not wasting time on data entry. And then I can do a lot more in terms of like custom logic and creating the templates in a way that's really nice and unique to each individual client's needs. And then simple things like client communication. I love Text Expander. I think I probably have 70% of the client communication pretty templated. I mean, we do a lot of the same stuff every day, just different clients and kind of different iterations. So being able to use that and put that in there makes sending emails really easy. It makes creating documents with certain provisions in it really easy. So that's been really nice. And then in terms of finances, I use Wave for my bookkeeping. I still do all my own bookkeeping and accounting. I like being in the weeds when it comes to the numbers of the business.
Stop talking now. Stop talking now.
I know. Everyone thinks I'm crazy.
Okay, let's skip over that part. Keep going.
So for all of our number nerds out there, so anything like that, I really love. I use Zapier for a lot of automation, so things just sort of happen when I click a button. 10 things happen. Throughout all of the parts of my business, from consultation and client acquisition through wrap up, technology is woven within there.
And so you're a proponent of AI, I assume?
Yes. Love it.
All of that has some level of AI.
Yeah, it's really been fun to see in like my task manager. All of a sudden it popped up as like a new feature, and it's funny to see the different companies start to incorporate it. But I really love it from a communication standpoint. I don't use it to generate legal documents, but certainly from like marketing and being able to say, you know, what's a good way to write this Instagram post or the caption for this TikTok video that I just made in a way that's going to certainly help it reach more people. I really love using AI for things like that.
Great. And so with your estate planning, I used to do estate planning as well. And so we were always flat fee. And I think you're a proponent of flat fee versus hourly. And I can see that in estate planning. And I've heard about it in family law. Are you also flat fee in family law? And how do you make that work when, you know, you're like, you know, sometimes people are just, you know, they just want to drag things out because they want to make it harder for the other side. And I just can't even imagine doing family law, to tell you the truth, but much less doing flat fee. So that's part of your different practice. Tell us about how you made that decision and how that actually works for you to be profitable and still work part-time and have the lifestyle you want.
Yeah. So when I first opened the practice, I was looking around at what other lawyers were doing to try and figure out, well, how do I provide these services in family law? How do other folks do it? And the vast majority, I think I found every single person I talked to did it by the hour, and they would give me their hourly rate, and they would make some comment about, well, you're, you know, less experienced, and so you should probably discount it. But that's where you should go, just bill by the hour. And I thought, well, if I was a client of this law firm that I'm building, I don't think I could afford that, because none of these attorneys could give me sort of an end point, like how much was this going to cost overall. And as I got more and more into it, I realized, well, their incentive really is to spend more time. And if I was going through a divorce, I would want this over as quickly as possible. And so I realized, I couldn't be a client of a firm if I had built it that way. And so I thought, you know, in good conscience, I'm just not going to do that. I can always go back to that. You know, that's obviously the norm. Nobody's going to think twice if I change my billing practices. But I thought, let me see if I can figure out a way to do this on a flat fee. So certainly in the beginning, again, a lot of throwing spaghetti against the walls. I definitely underpriced myself for the first year there. But as I started to gain more experience and learned all of the different variables that go into a family law case, I was able to really nail down the scope. And I think that's the biggest piece of doing something on a flat fee is I sell the value to the client. That's what they're paying for. But on the back end, I tell them very explicitly, this is what's included in this package. And here's the other litany of things that could potentially happen that sometimes happen in family cases and sometimes don't. And one of those really challenging ones, like you said, Victoria, is the other side is just using it as an opportunity to throw gasoline on the fire. The other attorney's incentive is to spend more money and make more conflict. And so my client sort of gets the brunt of that. But that's really the nature, unfortunately, of the business. And so being really upfront with clients about this could happen. That's not my goal. I hope that we can avoid that. But if they do file this, that, or the other motion, that's not included in the scope. And so we'll have to come back together. And if you'd like help with that, we can add that on. So we control our side of the street in family cases as much as we can. It's not a perfect solution because of the system that unfortunately the family attorneys work in, but it certainly works. And I have never had a client not understand that and not be receptive to, yeah, the other side's adding on. And so we're going to have to add on our side as well.
Right. And so when you are coaching other lawyers and law firms through your business, a different practice, are you focusing primarily on family law firms or estate planning firms, or is it lawyers of any kind of practice area?
It's any kind of practice area. I do focus on solo and small firm attorneys just because I think we're in a better position to be able to pivot, to implement different processes that are a little bit harder to do in bigger firms that have sort of their structure and their way of doing things. It can be harder to turn that tanker around, where us as solos on our little jet skis can move around pretty quickly. So just focusing on that, the size of the firm more than the practice area, but I've worked with folks in all different practice areas and been able to help them optimize their law firms.
And how do you define small law firm? Because, it's defined very differently from different organizations.
Yeah, so I think that for me, it's probably the 10 lawyer mark. But if there's, a head of a law firm of 25 lawyers, but they are really gung-ho about optimizing their firm and willing to put in different processes, I really think that it's the ability to pivot and make changes and implement new processes that's the real linchpin there. But generally, I find the sort of more associates, the harder it can be to do that pretty easily.
Okay. And so let's look at, this podcast obviously is for lawyers who are trying to have a business that's sellable someday so they can sell. And so one of the biggest questions we get all the time, of course, is, well, how do you value a solo practice, right? And so as you're helping yourself in your own law firm as well as others, where are the asset values that you see that if they wanted to leave at some point, that they could sell that?
Yeah, I think the processes is the big piece there. So being able to have the lawyer ultimately be sort of replaceable is where the company itself will have the value. So being able to have processes set up and SOPs and all of the technology in place where I could one day say, hey, I'm done, but new lawyer, come on in. This is your plug and play practice. That's where for us, especially as solos, we can sort of pass that bus test where the business can go on without us. But having that in place where the business itself is really systematized is where the value just continues to increase.
I agree 100%. And then there's the one other thing, because you've done it that way, your profit margin is so much higher, which is where the multiples really come into play, where people are willing to pay more for a firm, even though it's historically been seen as a book of business, but it's not anymore for true solos who systematize. And it actually is, anybody can plug and play as long as they've got their systems in place. So that's a whole lot of value. So Lauren, how can people find out more about you and becoming a client of a different practice and what you offer?
So you can visit me at adifferentpractice.com. You can sign up for a business assessment where I'll go through the 6 core elements that I think every law firm should have. And then we'll have a one-on-one discovery call and talk about the strengths of your business and maybe some areas that you can improve, as well as see all of the other coaching services that I offer on there. And again, that's adifferentpractice.com.
Great. And what would be the one thing you would want listeners to be left with today? The one thing you'd want them to remember forever.
That your practice is yours, and the way that it has always been done is not the way it has to be done anymore.
I can't say amen enough during this conversation. So, and I'm not even that religious, but you're bringing it out in me. I believe that solo practitioners still make up the majority of law firm owners out there. But I don't believe that there's enough resources to guide them on how to do it successfully, because many of your coaches out there, organizations, are all about scale, scale, scale. You have to have all these people doing everything for you. And what I'm hearing you say is, no, you don't. You can enjoy what you do. You can systematize it so you're not spending 80 hours a week. And you can profit because you've systematized everything. And ultimately, that is a valuable asset that people can sell when they're ready to get out. So I'm so happy to see that you are doing this for our fellow colleagues, because, I can't just throw a rock and hit another one of you out there that I know of, right? Not that I'd want to throw a rock at you, but you know what I'm saying. So thanks for being here and sharing your information with us, Lauren.
Absolutely. Thank you, Victoria. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, if you want more resources to help your law firm, then I invite you to become a member of our private Facebook group called The Art of Buying and Selling Law Firms, and continue to listen to this podcast, Smart Lawyers Position and Transition. You can also find out more information at our website, quidproquolaw.com. You have been listening to Smart Lawyers Position and Transition, which is a weekly show bringing timely and valuable information to lawyers seeking to sell or buy a law firm between now and 5 years from today. The show is available 24/7 online anywhere you listen to podcasts, as well as on our website, proquolaw.com.